Hello and welcome to the introduction to the 2019 call for Key Action 2. Please be aware the information in this presentation is for UK applicants only. Please note that this is a pre-recorded webinar, so should you have any questions, please contact the Higher Education Help Desk. The contact details will be given at the end of the presentation. The latest information about UK participation in Erasmus Plus after Brexit can be found on the Brexit update page of the Erasmus Plus UK website. Please check this page regularly or subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest updates. Here is the list of the countries that can apply for funding under the 2019 call for strategic partnerships. Organizations from these countries can also be partners in a strategic partnership project. All Key Action 2 projects are organization-led. Individuals can apply directly for a grant. While a staff member can complete the application form on behalf of the organization, the project remains the organization's responsibility, even if that staff member leaves the organization. A strategic partnership is transnational and involves a minimum of 3 organizations from 3 different program countries. There is no maximum number of partners. However, the budget for project management and implementation is capped and is equivalent to 10 partners. All participating organizations must be identified at the time of applying for a grant. As a general rule, strategic partnerships target the cooperation between organizations established in program countries. However, strategic partnerships can involve organizations from partner countries, which are countries outside Europe. Organizations from partner countries can only be part of a Key Action 2 project as partners and not as applicants, if their participation brings an essential added value to the project. This has to be justified clearly in the narrative sections of the e-form. Please note that if the partner country is not eligible, the entire application will be considered ineligible. If you are planning to include a partner country, we encourage you to strongly consider whether the role could be filled by an organization based in a program country. Please note, activities of learners as well as long-term activities of staff or youth workers from or to partner countries are not eligible. Please also note that any higher education institution based in a program country and participating in a strategic partnership must hold the Erasmus Charter of Higher Education before applying. An ECHE is not required for participating HEIs in partner countries, but they will have to sign up to its principles. If your HEI has not yet been awarded the ECHE, then your application will not be eligible. The call for applications for the ECHE is managed by the European Commission, and therefore you'll need to apply to the European Commission directly for accreditation. Please be aware that the application organizations must be legally registered in the UK. So, sole traders partnerships, other than Scottish partnerships and limited liability partnerships, trusts and unincorporated associations are not eligible to apply for Erasmus Plus funding. For more information about eligible participating organizations, please see page 108 of the 2019 Program Guide. So here's a brief overview of strategic partnerships in higher education. Projects can be between 24 and 36 months, with no project ending later than 31st August 2022. The Erasmus Plus program has significantly evolved from predecessor programs such as the Lifelong Learning Program. It is now much more strategic with clear objectives and priorities. Under previous calls, we have received feedback from assessors which show that some organizations were weak at making their applications personal and relevant to the organizations of the partnership. The assessors also commented that some applications did not explicitly show how their project linked to the Erasmus Plus priorities. So it's important to remember that your project will be assessed against its relevance. If you are considering applying for funding for strategic partnerships in the field of higher education, you must ensure that your project addresses at least one priority. Each year, the Commission sets horizontal and sector-specific priorities for Key Action 2. These are priorities that the European Commission would like Key Action 2 projects to address or target. Horizontal priorities are priorities that are applicable across all fields of education, training, and youth. So an example of a horizontal priority is social inclusion. So priority will be given to actions that help address diversity and aim to tackle discrimination, segregation, racism, bullying, including cyberbullying, violence, fake news, and other forms of online misinformation. There are also field-specific priorities which are relevant to each individual particular field of education, training, and youth, which are also set each year. The Europe 2020 strategy, as well as the European Policy Cooperation or ET 2020 framework, is an important European policy document which you should also consider when developing your application. It's really important that you clearly demonstrate to the assessors how your project is relevant to both your university and the priorities of the Erasmus Plus program. Here you can see the field-specific priorities for higher education strategic partnerships. These are important to consider because, depending on the priority and the objectives addressed by the projects, you should involve the most appropriate and diverse range of partners in order to benefit from the different experiences, profiles, and specific expertise, and to produce relevant and high-quality project results. Please note that your project must address one sector-specific or horizontal priority. The priorities on screen are only two of the sector-specific priorities for higher education. For more information on these examples and for other specific priorities, please look at page 103 of the 2019 Program Guide. Whilst your project will involve a number of organizations from across Europe, only the lead organization of the partnership should submit an application. This submission is made on behalf of the whole partnership. Project partners do not need to submit the same application to their own national agency. Higher education projects are multi-beneficiary grants, and this means that if your project is funded, the lead organization will receive the contract and funds. The lead organization is then advised to organize inter-organizational agreements with partners. So as a reminder, the deadline for applications is Thursday the 21st of March at 11 a.m. UK time and 12 at Brussels time. We can accept late applications. Anything submitted after 11 a.m. UK time will be considered late and ineligible. Considering that this deadline is applicable to all sectors of the Erasmus Plus program, the UK National Agency will be extremely busy in the lead up to this day. By submitting early, you allow yourself enough time to contact us and for us to have time to support you should you have any problems. So please don't leave it until last minute to submit your application. So we're now going to move on and take a look at budgets. An Erasmus grant is made up of budget categories, which together make up your total grant amount. Project management and implementation funds will automatically be added to your grant total as it is calculated according to the length of your project. You can see on the screen the wide variety of activities it could be used for. Funded projects can use some of the funds in this budget category if, without it, the project activities could not go ahead, and if it directly facilitates the implementation of the project. You must keep in mind that if this leads to poor quality of project implementation because there are not enough resources for the organizational and dissemination tasks, this would put your project at risk of having its final grant cut. It's up to the partnership to decide whether it can reallocate some of the money and still ensure that the project is carried out as planned and with high quality. In any case, beneficiaries will have to abide by the provisions set in the organization's grant agreement and the program guide. Transnational project meetings are used for partners in the project to meet and coordinate the project. The Transnational Project Meeting Fund can be applied for on the application form, although you'll need to justify the need for the meetings in terms of the number of meetings and participants involved. Meetings should be limited, and you should consider whether it would be possible to conduct the meeting over teleconference or Skype rather than a physical meeting. The two categories shown on this slide are based on real costs. This means you can enter any amount into the box within the application form. Before doing so, it's important to consider whether what you are applying for is eligible. Has it been justified within the application, and does it demonstrate value for money? Special needs support can also be requested as part of the application form. This is for additional costs directly related to the participants with disabilities and accompanying persons, including costs related to travel and subsistence if justified. Please note that costs for any individuals with special needs will have to be claimed under the Special Needs Support budget category. The request for financial support to cover special needs support must be motivated and explained clearly in the application form. Disability is defined on page 10 of the 2019 Programme Guide. Special needs support cannot be claimed for after the application stage, so you must claim for it in the application if you think there is a high possibility it will be needed to support participants with disability to take part in a mobility activity. The next budget category is exceptional costs. Please note the awarding of exceptional costs funding is not guaranteed. Clear and full justification must be given in the application. Exceptional costs are based on actual costs and must be supported by invoices and receipts at final report. You must clearly reference the section of the e-form where justification is given for each exceptional cost that is being requested. Before requesting exceptional costs, please check whether the costs cannot be covered under any other budget categories such as the project management and implementation budget. Exceptional costs can be requested only if they are critical to the success of the project and/or services, goods, or items that can't be provided by the organizations involved in the project. Clear justification must be given within the application form that these conditions have been met. Exceptional costs, if eligible, can provide up to a maximum of 75% of the real costs of services, goods, and items that would have to be subcontracted or procured by the project. Although it is not exhaustive, we provide a list of eligible and ineligible exceptional costs in our written application guidance. When applying for exceptional costs, you must be clear on how the funding amount you are requesting has been calculated, and that the amount represents 75% of the total cost of an item. Intellectual outputs are activities requiring substantial staff input in order to produce significant outputs. They include publications, for example, academic papers, policy recommendations at different levels, need analysis, curricular and course materials, new methodologies, training materials, or assessment methods and materials. To distinguish the production of such outputs from those covered by the funding automatically awarded to a project for project management and implementation, these outputs will have to be set out in detail demonstrating clearly the concrete outputs and the related effort put into producing them. The outputs should be innovative and creative and be developed with a clear aim of transferability or usability to organizations other than those participating in the project. So it's only considered intellectual output if their potential for wider use and exploitation, as well as for impact, is proven. For more information about what's considered an eligible intellectual output, please see our written application guidance and page 119 of the program guide. The production of an intellectual output is a process consisting of different steps that finally lead to the actual output itself. For example, conducting an analysis, researching, translating. These steps by themselves are not considered separate intellectual outputs. Staff costs for managers and administrative staff are already covered through the project management and implementation budget, but may be eligible for funding if their role working on the intellectual output is distinctly different from their regular role as project manager or administrator of the project as a whole. In order for funding for staff time against staff types to be granted, clear and explicit justification must be given in the application covering the above criteria. When selecting whether the staff time should be considered as a manager or administrative staff, you'll need to consider the role the individual has on the intellectual output rather than the role they have in the organization. So for example, if you have a professor undertaking administrative duties for an intellectual output, you should select administrative staff to reflect the role they have on the project, and not manager to reflect the usual day-to-day role in the organization. To be considered as staff for the development of intellectual outputs, the persons have to be either on a professional or voluntary basis involved in education, training, or youth, non-formal learning, and may include professors, teachers, trainers, school leaders, youth workers, and non-educational staff. In all cases, the beneficiary has to be able to demonstrate the formal link with a staff member concerned, whether the person is involved in the project on a professional or voluntary basis. You need staff timesheets, evidence of the person working at the organization, and tangible evidence of the output itself. A few examples would be a manager working one day on creating a case study for a research paper, an ICT technician spending 3 days creating technical specifications for a learning app, an administrator spending 1 day digitally formatting joint curriculum material created by teachers and managers. Staff working for the beneficiary on the basis of service contract, so for example, translators and web designers, are not considered as staff of the organization concerned. Their working time can therefore not be claimed under intellectual outputs. So a multiplier event are only available to projects that are producing intellectual outputs. The aim of a multiplier event is to share intellectual outputs to individuals and organizations outside of the Erasmus Plus project. Multiplier events should disseminate and increase the impact of intellectual outputs. Other dissemination activities will be supported via project management and implementation funds. Multiplier events are events organized by the partnership. So examples are conferences, seminars, or meetings that are directly associated to one or more of the intellectual outputs developed through the work of the project. If you are not planning to hold any multiplier events, you don't need to complete this section. However, if you do not fill in this section, you can't request funding retrospectively. The aim of a multiplier event should be to test, implement, or disseminate the intellectual outputs to a wider audience. Multiplier events should involve a large number of participants from organizations that are not already involved with the partnership itself. Such events can be organized at national or transnational level. Multiplier events can only take place in the program countries in which the beneficiaries are located. Both the profile and number of participants will have to be justified, as well as the approach to attract and involve the relevant external organizations and stakeholders. On screen are the learning, teaching, and training activities that can be applied for under Key Action 2 for higher education. Learning, teaching, training activities can be funded by a number of budget categories, which we'll look at in the following slide. Please note that the durations shown on screen do not include travel time. This is important to consider when planning activities under the project. You can find a list of eligible participants for each activity on page 110 of the 2019 Programme Guide. For travel, you can apply for a contribution to the travel costs of participants, including accompanying persons from the place of origin to the venue of the activity and return. Please carefully use the distance band calculator when claiming this budget in the application form. Please read page 120 of the 2019 Programme Guide carefully. For individual support, you can apply for a unit cost per day covering the subsistence of participants, including accompanying persons during the activity. Individual support can be used to cover the accommodation and subsistence of participants while undertaking their mobility activity. If you plan long-term mobilities, you can apply for linguistic support funds. This is to help contribute to costs linked to the support offered to participants in order to improve their knowledge of the language of instruction or work. Please bear in mind that this is only available for activities lasting between 2 and 12 months. You can find the application on the link provided on the slide here and the link to the partner mandate that is required for the application form. So to conclude, I'd like to remind you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the 21st March deadline for applications to be submitted under Key Action 2 Higher Education. So there will be written guidance available on our website. We recommend that you have it with you when you are completing your form, as it's very detailed and will help you to complete all the sections of the application. If you have any questions at any stage of the application, please contact us straight away. Here you can find a list of the useful documents when applying for the 2019 KA 203 funding. Finally, here are our contact details. Our team at the UK National Agency is available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have.